On December the 7th, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched 353 aircraft from 6 carriers and destroyed the US Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor in 110 minutes. It was the most precisely executed naval airstrike in history, and it still lost the war. Here is the scenario. The Imperial Japanese Navy at its December 1941 peak faces the modern US Navy in the Pacific of 2026. Same ships, same doctrine, same admirals. The IJN, 10 fleet carriers, 12 battleships, 36 cruisers, 113 destroyers, 63 submarines, 1,400 carrier-based aircraft. The 2026 US Navy, 11 nuclear-powered supercarriers, 92 destroyers, 53 attack submarines, approximately 3,700 carrier-based aircraft, 290,000 personnel. 2 rules. The IJN fights with 1941 weapons and doctrine. No retrofitting, no upgrades. Both sides start from equal distance, no ambush. This time, both sides see each other coming. The question is not whether the US Navy wins, the question is what it costs, and whether a fleet built for one decisive battle can still find a way to make that cost real. Phase 1. The opening strike. IJN Carrier Divisions 1 and 2, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, Zuikaku, 6 fleet carriers, 350 aircraft, US Navy, USS Gerald R. Ford, and Carl Vinson carrier strike groups. The gap here is not measured in generations, it is measured in physics. An F/A-18 Super Hornet cruises at 1,190 km per hour and carries AEM-120 missiles accurate beyond 100 miles. A Nakajima B-5N torpedo bomber cruises at 370 km per hour and must close to within 1 mile to release its weapon. The Super Hornet detects the B-5N before the B-5N's pilot can see the horizon it launched from. But here is what the IJN's aviators understood that range statistics do not capture. They were not afraid of dying. Imagine Midway, 41 Devastator torpedo bombers attacking the Gedo Butai in June 1942, flying slow and low with no fighter escort, survival probability near 0. They attacked anyway. Everyone was shot down. Their sacrifice drew the Zeros low and opened the sky for the dive bombers that sank 4 carriers in 6 minutes. The IJN flew with that same commitment, now aimed at a fleet that needs no 6-minute window to be decisive. On day 1, Kido Butai launches 180 aircraft. The E-2D Hawkeye, orbiting 250 miles ahead of the Ford strike group, detects the launch in 4 minutes. F/A-18S are airborne in 8. AIM-120S begin engaging at 90 miles. The Zeros at the front of the formation have no radar warning receivers and no understanding of what is killing them at ranges they cannot see. 61 aircraft from the first wave are destroyed before closing to 40 miles. The second wave turns back. One damaged B-5N releases a Type 91 torpedo at 1.2 miles. USS Leyte Gulf detects it at 800 meters and attempts a hard turn. The torpedo strikes the stern. Flooding is contained. The ship remains operational. IJN losses: 143 aircraft, approximately 200 aircrew. US losses: minor flooding to 1 cruiser, 0 killed. The Kido Butai's aircraft are gone. Its carriers remain. And 6 carriers with empty flight decks are now exactly what Kantai Kessen never planned for. Surface targets. Phase 2, the surface engagement. IJN, all surface forces, 10 carriers, 12 battleships, including Yamato and Musashi, 36 cruisers, 113 destroyers, US Navy, full Pacific Fleet, 11 carrier strike groups, 92 surface combatants, 53 submarines. The Yamato was the largest battleship ever built, 72,000 tons. 9 46-centimeter guns capable of firing a 1.5-ton shell, 42 kilometers. Its designers built it assuming no enemy shell could penetrate its armor. They were right. No shell did. Imagine the sinking of the Yamato in April 1945. 386 American aircraft, 10 torpedo hits, 2.5 hours. Now compress that to 22 minutes with weapons that require no aircraft to close within visual range. On day 2, with its carrier air arm destroyed, the IJN surface fleet advances. The plan is the only plan remaining. Close the distance, force a surface battle, fight on IJN terms. The distance never closes. At 180 miles, USS Arleigh Burke launches Harpoon anti-ship missiles at the battleship column. Tomahawk variants follow. The Yamato's 150 25mm cannons and 24 127mm guns were designed to engage aircraft at visual range. They cannot engage a supersonic sea-skimming missile they cannot see until it is 4 seconds from impact. But here is what the US Surface Force missed: the destroyer screen. Japan's Fubuki-class destroyers carried the Type 93 Long-Lance torpedo, 24 inches in diameter, oxygen-propelled 22-mile range, a weapon the US Navy did not fully understand until after the war ended. 11 IJN destroyers running at 35 knots under a rain squall close to within 8 miles of the outer screen before detection. They fire a spread of 88 Long-Lance torpedoes. 4 US destroyers maneuver clear. 1 does not. USS Mustin is struck twice. It sinks in 34 minutes. 41 crew members are killed. The IJN destroyers are destroyed within the hour. But they proved what the Kido Butai's airmen could not: that at close range in the right conditions, 1941 weapons still work. IJN surface fleet losses: all 12 battleships sunk, 28 cruisers and 89 destroyers destroyed. Estimated 38,000 to 47,000 IJN killed. US losses: 1 destroyer sunk, 3 vessels damaged, 41 killed. The IJN surface fleet no longer exists as an operational force. These are men who crossed the Pacific to close a distance that could not be closed. The submarines are the only option left. Phase 3, the submarine campaign. IJN, 63 submarines, I-class, RO-class, Type B fleet boats. US Navy, 53 Virginia-class and Los Angeles-class attack submarines, P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, SOSUS hydrophone network. Everything up to this point has been visible. This phase is not. The IJN submarine doctrine was built around one mission: attack enemy warships before the decisive surface battle. Japanese commanders trained for fleet engagements, not commerce warfare. They were looking for battleships. That choice cost them the Pacific War. It changes nothing in 2026. A Cold War hydrophone system laid across the Pacific floor was designed to detect Soviet nuclear submarines. IJN fleet submarines run on diesel-electric propulsion with acoustic signatures far louder than anything SOSUS was optimized for. A Virginia-class can detect an I-class boat beyond 50 nautical miles. The IJN can detect the Virginia-class at perhaps 3 miles if conditions are favorable. These are not unfair odds. They are the end of a conversation before it starts. But here is what the USASW picture underestimated: 63 submarines are 63 separate problems. Imagine the Battle of the Atlantic, U-boats sinking 3,500 Allied vessels across 5 years of war. The IJN is not running that campaign. But dispersed across a 3,000-mile operational area, 63 submarines running silent require 63 separate prosecutions. Each one takes time. Time favors the submarine. On day 11, I-19, the same boat that sank USS Wasp with a single torpedo salvo in 1942, penetrates the outer ASW screen during reduced-speed transit operations. It fires 6 Type 95 torpedoes at USS Theodore Roosevelt. 5 are decoyed. 1 strikes below the aviation fuel storage. The fire kills 23 sailors and puts the carrier off operational status for 2 weeks. I-19 is sunk 4 hours later by a P-8 Poseidon. By day 21, 58 of 63 IJN submarines are destroyed. IJN submarine losses: 58 boats, approximately 5,500 personnel. US losses: 1 carrier mission killed for 2 weeks, 2 vessels damaged, 23 additional personnel killed. Final verdict. Phase 1. The Kido Butai launched 180 aircraft and lost 143 before closing to weapons range. 1 cruiser damaged by a single torpedo that worked because it needed no electronics. It needed aim. 0 Americans killed. Phase 2. The IJN surface fleet advanced into a battle it could not win and proved at the cost of 38,000 to 47,000 lives that the Long-Lance torpedo still works at close range. 1 US destroyer sank. 41 killed. Phase 3. 63 submarines forced 21 days of sustained ASW operations across 3,000 miles of ocean. 1 carrier was taken off the line. 23 Americans died. Total US losses: 1 destroyer sunk, 1 carrier temporarily mission killed, 65 personnel killed. Total IJN losses: the entire fleet, approximately 44,000 to 53,000 killed, roughly 680 IJN personnel die for every American lost. Here is the real lesson. And it is not the one the numbers suggest. The Imperial Japanese Navy in 1941 was not defeated by American technology. It was defeated by American production. By 1944, the US was commissioning an Essex-class carrier every 3 months. Japan could not replace what it lost at Midway. The weapons were never the deciding factor, the factories were. In 2026, the scenario ends faster. The technology gap is absolute in ways the 1941 gap never was, but the counterintuitive truth remains. Every American casualty in this scenario came from the IJN's simplest weapons. The long-lance torpedo that sank USS Mustin required no radar, no software, no satellite. It required oxygen, a propeller, and someone willing to close the distance. The most advanced fleet in history was not threatened by the most sophisticated weapons of 1941, it was threatened by the oldest idea in naval warfare. Close the distance, fire when ready.